Danny, how are you today?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. So, Danny, I'm so excited for our chat together. We've gotten to know each other a bit. We've done a
Yeah.
little work together, and we've gone down such different paths, but have ended up in such interesting places around how we both look at innovation and building tech, and sort of like doing things from the bootstrap. And so, I'd love to get started with where your journey began. So, will you take us to where you went to school and what were you doing in those early 20s?
I went to undergrad at WashU in St. Louis. I had spent all of my previous years in high school and before that in theater and went to college with the expectation that my theater days were behind me, and that lasted like 5 minutes. And so to make a long story short, I graduated with a dual major in acting and marketing. And at the end of my junior year, I came very close to scrapping all of that and studying advertising, because in my marketing coursework, I had like one class on advertising and it was super interesting. And it was one of the first things, at least in business school, that I got really stoked about. And so I looked at what it would take to go get a degree in advertising at WashU. And long story short, it was going to take an extra year. And if you're familiar with WashU, that would not have been cheap. And so I did not do that and instead went to University of Texas in Austin and got a master's degree in advertising for like a sixth of what it would have cost for a semester at WashU. So yeah, I did that. Graduated in 2004 with a master's degree. Really enjoyed ad school. It was an awesome kind of creative plus business outlet, and moved to New York, the mecca of all things advertising, and bounced around a fair bit. I did some freelance work for the first kind of 9 months or so of my tenure here in New York, and then finally found a job as a junior art director. Yeah, junior art director at an agency called Merkley and Partners, working on primarily Mercedes Benz and hating every second of it.
First of all, very quick question. Did you do anything between college and masters? Did you go work for a little bit or you were straight into it?
Nope, I went straight from one to the other.
And did you envision having a master's? Like, were you I want to stay in school a little longer kind of person? Because I was a get the
No,
hell out of here kind of guy.
well, it's interesting. I was not gung ho on getting a master's degree or anything. I had never started college going, oh, yeah, I'm going all the way through and getting the master's thing. But when I discovered that I could actually study advertising and go and sort of learn to be creative, as the advertising parlance is, that was really what instigated for me the shift directly into graduate school. Because as I said, I got excited about that switch while I was at WashU, decided not to do it for kind of cost and timing reasons. It was going to take an extra year, and somehow 5 years to graduate with a bachelor's degree or 6 years to graduate with a bachelor's and a master's degree just sort of made sense to me. And so that was what led me directly into graduate school.
Got it. And going to New York is pretty obvious. We don't need to talk about that. Every now and then people go to these interesting places and you're like, why there?
Yeah,
So
no, it's New York.
you're in New York, you're doing the thing you've studied doing, although not on Broadway, the other thing in New York that's pretty
Yeah,
big.
the other thing in New York.
And you're working on a brand that most people would say, as I did hearing it, well, that's pretty cool. Except it wasn't that cool. What was wrong?
It was a really interesting time to be in advertising. So bear in mind, this was 2005, 2006. And so if you sort of, put your history hat on and think about what was going on in the world at that time, I was probably in one of the last classes coming out of the UT ad program that just ignored the fact that technology existed. The internet didn't exist as far as we were concerned. We studied how to make TV spots, magazine ads, billboards, etc.
Got it.
And then you get out into the real world and all of a sudden the internet's like kind of actually a thing, and social media was becoming a thing, and the first iPhone wasn't quite out at that time yet. And
Right.
so, the cool phone at the time was the Motorola Razr flip phone.
Love the razor.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was frustrated, is what it really came down to. I was frustrated by the lack of vision that we were given the opportunity to explore around what was possible in terms of how brands communicated with customers and built that relationship, especially in a world where the internet was really becoming a part of our daily lives. And there were so many opportunities that were opened up by the changes in technology and the changes in sort of connective tissue, if you will, between brands and people. And yet, I was working at a very old school ad agency that was doing billboards, TV spots, magazine ads. And so, my day to day working on, as you said, what should have been a really cool brand was Mercedes Benz. Everybody loves Mercedes. It's one of those high end brands that you look up to. My day to day, though, was hey, we need to put out an ad for the new, I don't know, C320 or whatever the hell the model was at the time. And I would go into the library of existing Mercedes Benz ads that the agency had created. I would find whatever was the closest size to the output that we were looking for. I would open it in Quark, of all things.
Randy,
And
I have to pause you. I'm hating this story.
good, you're supposed to. This is why I hated my life. So I would open it in Quark. I would nip and tuck and resize, and I'd swap out the image, and that was it. That was my job, and it was boring AF, man. Like, it was not fun, and I just got sick of it. I was also writing for a blog at the time, and again, blogs were new. It was
Sure.
cool. It was cutting edge, and so I was writing for a blog that was all about the changing world of advertising, and yet I was doing none of it. And
Right.
so I got intensely frustrated with it. And I used to call my mom often as I was leaving work and just like bitch because she would listen to me complain. And so to make a very long story short, I got to a point, I hit my breaking point actually in one specific meeting, which we can take the time to talk about or not. I'll leave that up to you. I basically made a decision that I was done with advertising. So I started interviewing everywhere that I could that was not an ad agency. And at the time, that included digital agencies because ad agencies and digital agencies were different things. I started talking to people in, graphic design shops. I came pretty close to going to Pratt for a second master's degree in industrial design because I
Wow.
wanted to like make things that I could touch. I had the early life crisis moment of I'm going to go to South America and climb mountains and find myself. Basically right before I had given myself like a January deadline of if I don't have a job by January, I'm like going to South America. And in late October, early November, ended up with two job offers, chose one, and ended up working at an innovation consultancy called Poke, that at the time was the New York spinoff of a London company. And the New York office had only been open for 2 or 3 months when I joined. So
Okay.
I was employee number 7 or 12 or something like that. And it was just such a massively different experience from what I was used to that it kind of ignited this like fire in me. I was enjoying it. I loved going to work every day. We were working with insane brands like American Express and Dyson, and we were getting RFPs from Fujifilm, and we were helping with the launch of True TV and all sorts of crazy stuff that for whatever reason I hit it off with one of the creative director or one of the founders who was the creative director there, and we just like discovered that we saw eye to eye on how the world should operate in terms of technology and brands and people and sort of where all of those things met in the middle. And so it was one of those jobs that, in my opinion, you're lucky if you get to find it because the more I was willing to bite off and the more I was willing to sort of tackle and throw myself into it, the more they were willing to let me. And
Amazing.
so I ended up doing things that I never would have done working for other companies, like sitting in James Dyson's office across the table from James Dyson discussing how we were going to launch his latest global product for him with a $0 marketing budget.
And
And
you're still early 20s at this point.
I am, yeah. So I started there in 2007. I would have been a little later than early 20s, having gone through grad school and undergrad all in one chunk, but I was early career. Let's put it that way.
I'll share one quick version, something back about same age as you. I was at another startup, not important right now, but I had a 30-minute one-on-one session with the CEO of Sony at the time. And
Nice.
I'll tell you, for me, I mean, it was amazing. It's very cool. But the whole time I kept thinking, why me? Like
Yeah. What am I doing here?
like I know what I'm doing, but like this guy,
Yeah.
how are you feeling? Did all your education set you up that you knew like this is how we launch a vacuum cleaner, or were you making it up as you went?
I was definitely making it up as I went. To be clear, I was not sitting one on one in James Dyson's office. It was me and a group of it was me, two other folks from Poke, two of the partners, and then a bunch of people from Dyson. And I say a bunch. I think there were six of us around the table. It was a close knit meeting, and we actually weren't launching a vacuum, but we didn't know this when we went. We were launching. If you've seen the bladeless fan that Dyson makes, the first one looked kind of like a lollipop.
Yeah.
That's what we were working on, but we had no idea. They wouldn't tell us when we flew over there what we were going to be working on.
Wow.
And so we walked in and they had one on the table with like the sheet over it. So you still couldn't see what it was. And they pull back the sheet and we were just like, we don't even know what we're looking at.
It's like a
You
ring
know,
camera, right?
yeah, exactly. And I was totally winging it. And I'd been given a huge dose of confidence because, as I said, Tom, the creative founder at Poke, and I really got along and saw eye to eye. And he gave me a huge amount of leeway and, for lack of better terms, rope to hang myself. But he was always sort of there as well. And so it was always like, you have enough rope to hang yourself, but I'm not actually going to let you do it. And so, he was sitting next to me at the table with James Dyson, and it was such an amazing experience because I felt like I had opportunity and autonomy with like the slightest bit of safety net. And so it really set me up in a great way.
I love the way you position that. And I found that there's a lot of people, especially in the modern era, where it's very hard for them to get that same confidence. I think there's so much less mentoring and taking people under our wings. How much of that would you say is sort of the who you are versus having that safe environment that Tom provided for you?
It was very much both. So to be clear, I would never have had the opportunity for growth and the experiences that I did had that not been offered by Tom's confidence in me and his willingness to let me explore and have weird ideas and actually put them in front of a client. That being said, it was still on me to have weird ideas, and it was still on me to figure out how to put them in front of a client in a manner where they didn't turn around and go, look at Tom and go, who is this idiot and what is he talking about? And so it was really kind of a 1-2 punch. Like, I don't think that without either of those, sides of the coin aspects, whatever, again, metaphor you want to throw at it, it wouldn't have worked. But if somebody were to ask me, the advice would be find somebody that you're excited to work with and who sees something in you that you're not even sure that you see in yourself. And I say that as though it's easy, but I say it with the full knowledge that like finding those opportunities is incredibly rare and incredibly difficult. And it's why if you listen to some of the other podcasts that I've been on, Tom's name comes up relatively often. And I really do credit him with giving me enough rope to go out and figure out what works and what doesn't. And I, luckily ultimately not hang myself with it, but every opportunity was there.
It's a great thought, and it's something I've always been. We've both seen like accelerators and so many startups, and it's like my number one advice is go find somebody else, right? And that's actually part of why I started doing this. So, okay, Danny, back to you. You're pitching amazing people on amazing visions. Did you have a vision for yourself at that time? Did you want to run the agency one day? Did you want to go out on your own? Did you want to hit Broadway, go to South America? What was going on in your head?
If you had asked me at the time, taking over the agency would have been an amazing end to that story. Obviously, it did not happen. Poke is not around anymore. I spent about 5 years working with the team at Poke, and to be completely honest, it was a little too long. I should have taken the opportunity for the learnings and figured out what was next sooner. But at the same time, I felt like I was continuously learning. And so it was that's a really hard thing to walk away from if
Sure.
you're able to recognize it and see the value in it. And to be honest, I think to some extent I also got a little scared. I found a great place where I could really thrive. And the idea of leaving that behind when there wasn't a forcing factor was something that I struggled to chew on a little bit. And, really took me a little bit more time than it should have to kind of get over that moment. And so, even as we're talking about mentorship and confidence, and I'm sitting here telling you, how much my confidence grew during that time. At the same time, there was still those moments of doubt in there that I wasn't sure about. And my time at Polk was really interesting as well because, as I said, I went to school for advertising and had never studied technology. So I had no background in technology whatsoever before starting at Polk.
Wow.
And that 5 years was like my full on immersive education into the worlds of technology and entrepreneurship and startups and how brands and people work together or could work together and all of that. And that was part of what got me so excited about it was, my God, I'm starting to understand what's happening in the world around me in terms of how it's changing primarily through technology. And now I'm starting to have ideas about where that could go and how that could be used. And for whatever reason, my education didn't include the notion of entrepreneurship. And so I just sort of never really thought about what it took to start a company. I had been busy memorizing lines and, thinking about what my next character was and all of that. And so those 5 years changed the entire trajectory of my career because all of a sudden I had this really interesting sort of combination of creativity and practical business sense that combined into this world of, oh my God, like I can go start a company and like that's a thing. Wow. And so that has been the rest of my career.
It's fascinating to me. First of all, realizing that you had no tech background is amazing, considering how much I know of you as a technologist. But I think about, you made a comment that you stayed too long with the 5 years, and at the same time, I'm hearing how much that pushed you forward in life,
It
right, and
did.
how much you grew from that. And it's such an interesting and delicate balance of that stay too long, didn't stay long enough,
Yep.
overdid, underdid. Do you have a rubric of any kind now that you use to make decisions like that? Or is that just, again, a thing that as life has hit you with things, you've gone through it?
I don't really have a rubric for it, or at least when you say rubric, I think of like, a matrix of like, well, if this happens and then this happens, then I should exit here or whatever. And I definitely don't have anything that's that clear cut around it. What I
You don't have
do
a
have
whole flow
though,
chart.
there's no massive flow chart other than the craziness that happens up here. But what I have gained is a lot of experience and a lot of the ability to look back and say, well, had I seen the writing on the wall when that happened, I might have understood that this then could be more likely to occur, and so on and so forth. And so I guess the answer is it's not so much a rubric, but it's a lot of experience. And uh, you know me well enough, Jeremy. You've probably heard me talk about failure a few times. I had enough failures under my belt as well that it has just sort of shaped the manner in which I interrogate opportunities and think about what I should be doing and what comes next and when the right time to exit stage left is and all that.
Since you threw it out there, I want to double click on failure for a second. I feel like we live in a society where we all say, especially in tech, oh, failure is okay. Fail fast, fail this, fail that, learn, oh, you failed, we'll try again, etc. And then at the same time, I feel like we live in a society that is almost no tolerance for anything
Yep.
going slightly askew.
Yep.
What have been your experiences with that?
So I've kind of cultivated a an interesting relationship with the idea of failure, and in part, it has led to the creation of kind of a personal mantra, which is fail beautifully. And to me, that is the moment. It's almost the moment that you're describing. How do you deal with the idea of failure, which is seen as a negative, in conjunction with the idea that you have to fail in order to grow and learn and move forward? And what I've sort of come to realize there is that I don't like the idea of failure in the way that I think Silicon Valley has come to champion it. It's not about failing fast or even necessarily failing forward. To me, it's about being comfortable enough with the idea that you can fail
Mm,
and still understanding that that failure is not the end of the thing. You can fail in a startup endeavor, you can fail in a job, you can fail in any given day of the week, and you can still get your butt out of bed the next day and go back to the same job. You can still continue building the same startup and the same product. And for me, it's a reminder that failure has to be a learning experience, and it has to be something that we're comfortable enough living with and talking about and sort of internalizing so that you have the opportunity to learn from it. And that to me is not fail fast. It's, I don't know, I fail slow, fail with the opportunity to,
I like the way you said before. Fail beautiful.
yeah, that's really what it is, and part of that is if you're going to fail, do it with gusto, you know,
Love that.
give it, really what it comes down to is if you're going to try something and it's an important enough thing for you to put your time into, put yourself into it. And if you fail, learn from it what you can and move on, as opposed to reveling in the failure, I guess, for lack of better terms. You
Yeah.
don't live in the failure, just learn from the failure.
That's so great. I had a colleague recently say to me, my startups were going through a struggling time. And one of the comments I was, it's a good friend. And I said, well, I'm worried my startup may fail. He said, well, that's impossible. I said, well, I don't know what you mean. I think it's very possible.
Yeah, not from my perspective.
And what he said is, look, Jeremy, you've been at this for a couple of years now. You're making revenue. You've built a product that people use. You have successfully built a startup.
Yeah.
Now you might fail at building a business.
Yes.
And it was
that's
like
a really good distinction.
What a great way to think about that, right? Like,
Yeah.
how much have I learned from this experience? Even in my 50s, I'm learning from this startup. And whether or not the business works or doesn't work, we're going to figure out, and we're going to figure it out this year. But
Right.
I love that thinking of how you can reframe some of those opportunities. But Danny, I want to get back to your journey now. So when you decided to leave Poke, it sounds like you left without the safety net. What happened? What happened next?
So I left Poke. I immediately started my first company. So it was my first foray into founding a startup. It was a miserable failure, but we, as you said, we learned at every step. We tried to do everything right. We were trying to validate our ideas along the way. At the time, in much the same way that Poke was sort of this jump in with both feet experience of relearning what it meant to create things for brands and people and the interaction moment between them. Creating my first startup was the first sort of jump in with both feet moment of how do you build a company and what does it mean? And this was very much in, I guess you could say we are today too. I started to say it was very much in the heyday of New York startups, but really what it was is it was in the sort of early and burgeoning days of New York startups, and New York Tech Meetup was all the rage, and they'd pack, 2,000 people into the auditorium at NYU and all of that. And so it was a really exciting time to be involved in a startup in New York. And I did all of the things that you're supposed to do. We went out and tried to find funding, and we got no funding, nor should we have. Let me be clear.
So Danny, I want to hear if you still have it at your memory's disposal. Do we have an elevator pitch? Can you give me the 30 seconds or less of at any point, any version of them that you'd like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the company that I started with my, at the time, girlfriend, who is now my wife. It was called Date Night Is, and it was designed to be a solution for couples who had sort of reached the moment of becoming a we. So couples, as you start out dating. Of course, online dating was all the rage at the time. This was pre-swiping in apps, so I'm dating myself here. But we realized that there was nothing in the technology space that was designed to foster relationships once you had found the right person, quote unquote, on a dating app or whatever. Okay. And so we were building things like reminders that you should keep date night on the calendar, and helping people find opportunities for date night. You should go to this restaurant and follow it with this show. And, there's a 10-minute stroll in between. And guess what? You can hit this bar for a nightcap afterwards. And we were creating content around what it means to be in a relationship, especially in the digital era, and so on and so forth. And so in the most simple terms, it was dating for couples, but not in the Ashley Madison cutaway.
And in the same brevity, how would you look back now and say, can you pinpoint, was there one thing that went wrong? Did everything go wrong? What would be your own sort of self-assessment of the biggest problem that stopped that from growing?
I think the biggest issue was that based on what we were learning at the time, and this is part of why I sort of nodded to the tenor of startups in New York, everything was venture backed, and there was a lot of money flowing at the time, and so we just assumed that the right way to go and build a startup was to get enough of an audience, or a user base, to go and garner venture money, and that was how you built. And if I could do all of that over again, it would be focused on how do we find a revenue stream from day one and build this into a sustainable business so that when we decide to go get venture funding, we have a stronger leg to stand on, and maybe we don't have to at all.
And so, how long did you spend trying to make date night work?
Uh, Date night lived for about, it was 2 or 3 years. I can't remember. I mean, to be clear, we had, users numbering in the tens of thousands, and people were finding dates and things like that. I started to say the technology side of it wasn't interesting or useful, and that's wrong. I'm doing it a disservice because we built a great piece of technology that solved, I think, ultimately the wrong problem for couples. And so, coming back to your question, I would have focused on revenue sooner, and I would have spent more time learning from customers, from couples, what would have benefited them. And I think that, I think we would have learned a ton and probably approached things differently.
Do you think that the concept of the app is revivable? Would you try it again in 2025?
We've talked about it actually, and are still vaguely toying with the idea of bringing it back. I don't know. If somebody listens to this and you think it's a great idea and you'd use it, reach out to me, please, because I need a kick in the pants to actually get over the hump of restarting it. But I think if we were to do it today, we would start it as a newsletter, and we would focus it solely on New York City, just because we're here, not because, anything more than that. But we tried, at the time when we built it, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't know, whatever it was. We were trying to enable growth nationwide. And so we were trying to source things like, how do you find out where the cool restaurants are in, Seattle when you live in New York? And
Right.
that's really freaking hard. So I
It's
think I would
it's
start
still hard.
smaller. Oh, yeah.
It's still hard. And I don't necessarily mean for date night. It's just like I'm supposed to grab a drink with a buddy next week, and we're like, well, where do we go? And
Yeah.
I don't really want to go to Yelp. Nothing wrong with Yelp, but it's not going to solve that for me. And I can't filter and be like, well, where's a good place for I'm gonna. So
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of want your newsletter just because I have a hunch it'd be stuff I'd be interested in.
Well, and that's the other thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I think, just for couples. It's
Yeah,
also this moment of, I don't know, I've got a date coming up. Where should we go? Or, and I'll use date loosely in this context. You're going on a date with whoever it is. It's you're going to sit down with somebody, and you want an environment that's conducive and suits you. Is really
yeah.
what it comes down to.
All right, so you've killed the startup. What happened next, and maybe take us through from there to what you're doing now.
Sure. So at the same time, or kind of partway through working on Date Night, I started doing some consulting work for other startups and things because, running a failing startup does not put money in the bank account. Inevitably, I ended up finding some really interesting companies that I was doing work with. One of them invited me to become their head of product. That was a company that was attempting to build an AI model that leveraged humans to help understand and create metadata around the timeline of video content.
Oh,
So yeah, it was super interesting and a lot of really interesting real world applications. And we had enough technical firepower behind it that, there was a thing there. It wasn't just a pie in the sky idea. And so the thinking was, especially at the time, if you put a YouTube video somewhere, wherever it was, or search engines looked at that and they just went, yep, that's a video. And what I can tell you about it is that it's called, how to screw in a screw with a Phillips screwdriver or whatever the hell it is.
I
And
just watched that one. It's got 19 million views. It's great.
yeah, it is, but it's like 20 seconds long and you only need about 3 seconds of it. And, there's no way to know that. Anyway, and so we were trying to help people understand that, hey, this is a video. It's a 40-minute video that's a compilation of, I don't know, cars on racetracks. If you're interested in the Ferrari, you should go to minute 13 and watch for these 4 minutes or whatever.
And when was this, Danny? Roughly what time frame?
14-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, it was well before AI in the way that we think of AI today and so on and so forth. And so That was really exciting. We had a CEO who had terrible shiny object syndrome. And so it made it very difficult to actually go and like focus on a specific use case, which was made all the harder because this type of technology had a lot of different applications to it.
Did you take a full-time role or did you stay on as a consultant there?
No, I took a full time role there. Yeah, I was head of product for them. I spent 2 years working with that team, building out things like search within video, the ability to shop video. So we leveraged the Amazon and Walmart APIs at the time and our tagging platform. And so, if you were watching a cooking video and they're cutting with a, I don't know, name a fancy chef knife, we would
Petco.
populate the sidebar with that knife and you could buy it off Amazon or Walmart, that kind of thing. And all of it, of course, today you go, well, yeah, of course, like I've seen that before. But at the time, nobody had seen the ability to shop a YouTube video. And so there was a lot of really cool stuff that we were learning. Anyway, a couple years into that, it became clear that we were not going to convince the CEO to like pick something and run at it. And so a couple of us left that company, and from there I was offered a job at Legendary Pictures out in LA. Yeah, the movie studio.
Right.
Legendary was Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, all the MonsterVerse movies, so King
Yeah.
Kong and
Yeah.
all that stuff, Godzilla. I so one of the guys that I had met working at the AI startup became kind of the CTO over there. I got hired to work on a small technology SWAT team that was just exploring weird stuff ancillary to the movie industry, and we answered directly to the CEO and the CTO. Sorry, I was working for the VP of engineering at the time. And so we were thinking about things like how do you use AR and VR to create interesting experiences that might promote a movie? Things like that. And then we were also working with their video on demand platform. They had a small studio that created a bunch of web content. They ran Geek and Sundry and Nerdist and
Oh,
a number
sure.
of other popular like blogs. And so we were helping them with all of their technology infrastructure for the streaming content coming out of that studio. All of that being said, on the Friday of my first week, the CEO called everybody into the cafeteria and said, "I'm out. Goodbye."
Wow.
And so I was on a team that was supposed to answer to the CEO, and he left. So we spent 6 months sort of quietly biding our time within the walls of Legendary and figuring out what was next. And four of us then left and started another company in the video space that was focused on helping media companies manage and distribute large catalogs of video content. So we were actually working with Legendary. We worked with Lionsgate and a number of the smaller studios out in LA to basically build a platform that was designed to make it easier to manage all of the videos, manage the metadata around them, and then handle all of the on-demand scheduling and distribution of that content.
You've been hitting all of these different aspects. And what happened with it?
So interestingly, about 2 years into that company, we took on funding from a family office. And one of the stipulations of that funding round was that we had to help some of the other portfolio companies with their technology needs.
Okay.
And so kind of overnight, I went from being head of product for my second kind of video startup to being both that and a consultant for the other companies in the portfolio, which was actually super interesting. One of those was a video security company. And so it was still in the video space, but we sat down with them one day and they basically said, hey, we think we found product market fit. We built our current platform by duct taping together a bunch of stuff that was on the market. And now every time we onboard a customer, I got to go hire like 2 to 3 people to support the customer. And it's not sustainable. We need somebody to basically interrogate all of our internal processes and workflows and then rebuild our entire tech stack to support the way that we want things to work instead of the way that they do work. And so that somebody became me and a team of about 5 people that I put together to go and do that for the next year. And it was a really interesting experience because it combined all of the sort of video technology work that I'd been doing for the last, call it 5 years, but then layered in a lot of kind of consulting work for lack of a better descriptor in terms of what does the process look like internally? What happens? We've got a camera on a house in LA that's being monitored from a control center on the East Coast. What happens when one of those cameras pings and says, I see something? How do we deal with the flow of information around that alert into the command center so that it doesn't take them 20 minutes to get to it, by which time whatever that camera saw has either broken into the house or run away or whatever. And how do we sort of triage and manage all of that? And then all of the sort of audit logs and the storage of all of the past content. They get an angry customer, and these were their customers were primarily sort of high net worth folks who wanted private security monitoring of their property 24/7. And
Got it.
so the balance of security and information and storage and audit trails and all of that was just really interesting to tackle. And so I got to the end of that year, and I had a couple of folks from the family office, and then my founders kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you seem to really enjoy this kind of like problem solving, consultatory plus technology type of stuff. Do you want to go do that? We'll help support you, and we'll help make sure that you have clients and customers for that." And so that led to about 4.5 years ago the creation of today's company, which is called Apollo 21. So Apollo 21 is a innovation and product design studio, and we primarily help kind of emerging enterprise up to larger organizations figure out how to make technology and innovation work for them. So what does innovation mean within our walls? What are the operational and cultural impacts of innovation? How do we leverage venture building as a means towards growth and sort of building towards the future? And then we help make that actionable by putting together the team, figuring out what the first venture should look like, and working with them to go and build that and then sort of transition it into their internal environment so that they can carry it forward without needing to rely on us, forever.
Really exciting. I love how you've taken that arc and found what you like in it and built a whole thing around it. So I'm curious, with that setup, how do you define success in what you do today?
Success is on a couple of different scales. There's personal success, and it's not to be blunt about it, but can I make enough money to survive, and my living happily and all of that stuff. But then the other side of success is success for our clients, and figuring out what that looks like. And it's been a huge learning curve. I mean, I've done consulting work and consulting in the technology space for what did I say? I started in 2000, like 15 years now. And it's still a challenge to figure out how to help people navigate sort of the build versus buy moment, the
Mm,
how much should we go and build out of the gate versus, really, to reframe the question, how little can we build out of the gate to sort of prove the viability of whatever that new venture is, et cetera. And so I think in terms of beyond the personal success moment, success to me looks like helping our clients succeed and navigate those moments in a manner where they see real tangible growth and have an opportunity to kind of go from, what they came to us with to whatever tomorrow looks like for them. We've managed to do that across a whole bunch of different industries. We spent about a year and a half building the entire tech stack for a company in the rodeo space, of all things, which was super exciting because rodeo and technology are not usually something that, you talk about together. And
I'm going to be
so
honest. I've been in the tech industry 30 years. I don't think the word rodeo in context has ever been used.
exactly. And yet I spent a year and a half building technology for rodeo. And it was
Amazing.
like, it's awesome. I love that because I look, I'm not a rodeo guy despite having grown up in Texas, but to me, the fun part and the interesting part is unpacking what makes rodeo different. Why is technology for rodeo unique and interesting? How do we solve the needs of that audience? And I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of the technology that we built for them and for a number of our other clients, much like the security effort, is focused on internal use technology. How do
Okay.
we streamline operations? How do we automate things? How do we make the lives of the employees easier? But one of the things that we worked on with the rodeo company was effectively building a mobile app that was ESPN for rodeo. And
Wow.
that was really exciting because based on who they were, we had access to both fans and to athletes in the rodeo space. And we could literally sit down in the room with them and say, okay, as an athlete, if you were going to have a mobile app in front of you, what would you want it to tell you? And I mean, there were so many interesting things. Like, I'll give you an example. In rodeo, often they don't know who's winning the rodeo or the event that they're focused on in rodeo until it's over. rodeo is interesting because it's actually made up of, forgive me, 8 different events, I
Oh,
believe.
wow.
And the events are scored either based on time or based on points. And so you look at bull riding, for example, and everybody looks at it and goes, oh, well, if you stay on the bull for 8 seconds, you win, right? No. If you stay on the bull for 8 seconds, you have a chance to win. And then what you are judged on is the quality of your ride. And so it's extremely
Wow.
subjective. And it is 50 points to the bull and 50 points to the rider, which makes up a score out of 100. And
Okay.
so a rider could have the most beautiful, and I don't even know what this means, but it could have the most beautiful bull ride ever. But if the bull was like too easy, then they could still lose,
Okay.
because part of the scoring is, well, how much was the bull bucking and how high did it jump and stuff like that. Anyway, and so part of what was really interesting about all of this was having the opportunity to really work closely with both the fans and the athletes to figure out what would be unique and interesting and beneficial for them. And when we started the process, they actually asked us to go and build 2 apps, one for the fans and one for the athletes. And our kind of customer research revealed that in rodeo, perhaps unlike most other sports, the line between athlete and fan is extremely blurry, because the guy who's in the stands at the American Rodeo, which is one of the biggest rodeos in the country, once a year in Dallas, might be out the weekend before competing in his like local or regional bull riding event.
Okay.
And it would not be unheard of for that guy to have a stellar year and show up in the American rodeo the next year. And so, unlike, the NFL where you have to get drafted out of college or I don't know, maybe high school, whatever, like rodeo, you can go from nobody to, world champion in like a year. And so the idea that like there was actually this dividing line between those two audiences was wrong. And it
Okay.
was really cool because we were then able to build one app that was serving both audiences and kind of acknowledged that blurry line and treated everybody as a participant in their own right in whatever that meant for them.
Amazing. When you look at the world today and you look at, this little thing called AI entering it,
Yeah.
how are you embracing it in what you do? How do you allow it into your life or not?
It's interesting, Jeremy. My answer to that question actually isn't really specific to AI, but it's just the way that I view technology in general. When something new comes out, the first thing I do is try it. Like, and it kind of doesn't matter what it is. I want to put my hands on it, play with it, understand to the best of my ability how it works, what it can do, what it can't do. And then from there, it's, oh, this is fun and cool, but I have no use for it. Or, oh my God, I have some AI window that is open on my machine 24/7. And for me, I, in many ways, has become sort of a thought partner. One of the difficulties of running a company that works entirely remotely is not having, the people sitting around you. And
Sure.
let me be clear, I'm a huge fanatic for remote work and I believe in it thoroughly, but I've also worked in enough collaborative environments to understand that there are drawbacks to it.
Oh,
And
for sure.
so,
Everything is a downside, but that,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. But, for me in that world, AI is sort of the thing that I can bounce a thought off of and see what comes back. And I guess the caveat in that with AI is do so with a healthy dose of skepticism because it might be wrong. As we all know, ChatGPT is highly sycophantic and will tell you how wonderful your ideas are, regardless of how true or untrue that is. And so, you sort of have to balance out the this is amazing and it can help me do things with the this is telling me I'm amazing and maybe it's wrong.
Do you counter program ever? Do you tell it, hey, don't make
Oh,
me
all the
feel
time.
great? Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. And I've gone into, whatever custom settings are available depending on the platform and basically said like do not placate me, do not tell me I'm amazing. Like I want the honest, raw, like give it to me straight truth here. And it helps a little, but like you still have to know what you're looking at and, well, that sentence sounded amazing. That's a great conclusion to your paragraph.
I love when you get one of those and it's like, this was a great email. Well done. You should send this. And then you write a new prompt called, you're the so and so at so and so. You just received this email. What do you think of it?
What do you think? Yeah.
And it's like, well, I think this might come across the wrong way. And it's like you have to play them against each other. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a really interesting time in this. Well, I think we should talk a lot more about tech and innovation and such on a future conversation. You up for that?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, Danny. I love every aspect of it. I do have one final question that just popped in my head is there any part of you anywhere along the journey that would rather be in South America climbing mountains?
Yes. Full stop. I mean, sure.
I
I
think that's the only answer, by the way.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think if it's not in
yes.
there somewhere, yeah.
Yes. I'm just going to leave it at that. Yes. There is a tiny little part of me somewhere. But that being said, I love doing what I do. And uh, I find innovation fascinating and really enjoy sort of learning what works and what doesn't, both historically and today, and helping people understand why innovation is so hard.
I love that. Danny, where can people find you? Where do you want them to look you up, or what should they do?
Two key places. So if you're interested in learning more about our work, check out apollo21.io. And if you just want to hear or read more of my ramblings on the world of innovation, check out innovatedisruptordie.com, which is both a newsletter and a podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny, and have a great rest of your day.